Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Jesse Haines. Jesse Haines Fabrication. Jesse Haines, world-renowned rock crawler and four-wheel drive enthusiast. Jesse, thank you for coming on board and talking about your history in off-road with our listeners.
Yeah, no problem. I've been looking forward to doing it for a while.
Yeah, we talked about it real early in the year or late last year and just haven't been able to find time to do it, but here we are.
Yeah, it might have been when we were man, I can't remember, when we were moving last year or something. But
yeah, and getting ready for the new season, and
yeah.
You had a lot of cars building, which you probably still do. But we'll get into that. So let's start off with the same question I pretty much ask everybody. Where were you born and raised?
Grew up in Traverse City, Michigan, which is the northern lower peninsula, and lived there for, I think, 24 years.
Okay. Traverse City, is that rural or is it a metropolitan area?
Well, I guess it's somewhere in between. I think it's an area around 100,000 people. But
okay.
I don't know. I mean, if you look at the state map of Michigan, you know, you've got a few areas that are pretty densely populated, but once you start going farther north, there's just not as many large cities. It's the largest city for quite a ways. Probably as far as going far north, it's probably the last big city, I guess you'd say. But so yeah, I mean, it was a decent sized town. It's grown quite a bit since then too, but it's more of a tourist area. It's right on the somewhat, I guess you'd say it's on Lake Michigan, but it's technically Grand Traverse Bay.
Okay. So growing up there, how did you get your start? What was did you ride bikes, or what kind of activities were you into when you were young?
Well, I was, as a kid, just into all kinds of cars and trucks and different stuff. And I think it started with Legos and then models, and then RC car stuff. And, when it got old enough, it evolved into, working on your own full-size car, real cars.
Okay.
But, before that, I was always, as a kid, I was always into monster trucks. Like, ironically, when I was a kid, I mean, I think my goal in life was to own a monster truck someday. And at this point, it's like I could probably build a monster truck if I wanted to, but it's not something I'm interested in anymore.
Right.
But one thing that's kind of interesting is, back in, I bet I was maybe 10 years old or even younger, I remember watching on ESPN or ESPN2, they'd had desert racing quite a bit, and they had the Mickey Thompson Stadium Series stuff, and I loved watching that stuff. I watched that stuff all the time. And as far as like monster trucks, I mean, that was stuff that I knew what time each week the episodes would be on, and I would absolutely made sure I didn't miss that stuff. So, I mean, I was big into it when I was young, always interested in off-road motorsport stuff.
Okay. Let's talk about your early school years. Were you scholastic, athletic, both, or do your own thing?
Man, it seems like all of the above in a way. So I don't know, I was somewhat good in school or capable. At one point I was on the our school's like Olympics of the Mind team, which was for talented and gifted kids or something, But the thing was, I just didn't like school. I never really did extremely well. I just, didn't apply myself, I guess you'd say.
Did enough to get through?
Yeah. So actually, when I was a kid growing up, I was really into hockey. I played hockey, and I was, I don't know, maybe more into hockey than I was into off-road stuff. As far as monster trucks was the big thing, I guess, when I was a kid. But I mean, I would just sit there in school, and while the teacher's teaching us whatever we need to learn, I was either drawing hockey goalies or monster trucks or some other type of crazy off-road thing, And I still have some of those pictures that my mom saved that they're funny to go back and look at, all the stuff that I drew. But well, I don't know. I loved drawing when I was in elementary school, and did it, when I was supposed to be doing actual schoolwork. But
Right. So what position did you play goalie then?
Yeah. So I always wanted to play goalie when I was younger, and just because I was always fascinated with goalies' equipment.
Okay.
Because they have such unique equipment and cool helmets, and so I didn't actually end up playing goalie until I was 12 or 13, and played through college basically. And I don't know. I mean, I played on some pretty good teams and some pretty high level teams. Our school had a Division I NCAA hockey team, and I essentially played on like the junior varsity team. It's not quite what it was, but it was basically what it was. We traveled quite a bit and played in leagues, and one year we almost won the national championship in that, and it was an awesome experience. Playing hockey was something that was an important part for me growing up. And I don't really I can't remember how long it's been since I played. It's maybe been 6 years now since I played. When I first moved out here to Nevada, technically I lived in Dayton for a little bit, and then I moved to Carson City for a little while. And at that time, the South Lake Tahoe ice rink wasn't that far away, and so I started playing out here a bit. And then when I moved to Sparks, it was almost an hour and a half to go play, and it just made it difficult. But now they've got a rink in South Reno, which is a bit closer to where I'm at. So our kids started ice skating, but I still haven't started up playing in a league yet.
Well, that's awesome. So at that age group, did everybody drop their sticks and still fight?
When's that?
Playing hockey at any of the age groups that you were in, was it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
is that just like part of the sport? I mean, I'm not a hockey player. Never have been.
So
I don't ice skate real well. I can roller skate better than I can ice skate.
Yeah. So basically, it's almost completely restricted for any league that's under 18. They're just not going to let you get away with it. But once I started playing in college, it was weird. There was some refs that would not allow it, and then there was other refs that would just let it go. And I mean, we had some like epic fights where the refs would totally let it go, and helmets were coming off, and people ended up bloody, and it was a good time.
I just never would have thought of Jesse Haines as a fighter.
Well, see, the goalies almost never get in a fight, and so I wasn't actually involved in it. You know,
Okay.
I was there, but not an active participant. So the goalies, I don't know if you've seen the highlights before, but once in a while, you know, the goalies, it's like almost taboo. Regular players don't fight goalies, but once in a while,
The goalies
you'll
will
see.
come out and meet each other.
Yeah, and that's awesome. But no, never. That never happened.
I always like to say, you know, I went to a boxing match and a hockey game broke out.
Yeah.
So, so then I know that you went to school for engineering, drafting. Is that correct?
Yeah. I went to school for a few different things, I guess.
Okay.
I started out. Well, I started taking AutoCAD classes as a senior in high school, and I basically spent the whole semester just drawing a bunch of different trucks and stuff. and I really enjoyed it. And so then I started taking some of that stuff at community college and enjoyed it. And then I went away to Ferris State University. I guess it was a year after I graduated high school, and then thought I wanted to be in the, you know, technical drafting program there, and it sounded cool. I enjoyed the drawing part, you know, and the design part. Well, towards the end of the first year that I was there, we went on a field trip, and the field trip was, you know, essentially showing you what kind of job you'll have when you graduate from this program. And by the time I was done with the field trip, I'm like, nope, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not interesting to me. And coincidentally, they had a automotive department, and every day on my way to class, you'd walk through the automotive department, and I just kept thinking, this is way cooler than the stuff I'm doing. I don't know why I'm in the drafting, you know, but I ended up switching majors to, it was technically a 2-year auto service program, and then the 4-year degree was automotive engineering. But I ended up taking some additional classes when I was in school. Coincidentally, one of the hockey coaches was also a machining lab instructor. And so part of the first program I was in, there was a machining processes class you had to take where, you learn how to use a mill and a lathe. And then later I ended up taking lab credits where I could just go into the machine shop, and my hockey coach was the teacher basically, and he let me go in there and make anything I wanted. And that was, you know, awesome experience and good practice. But I also took some welding classes, a few things that I wanted to learn that didn't necessarily apply to the degree I was getting. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was happy with what I learned there, that's for sure.
So you're using lathe and milling machine, that kind of stuff. Was it all manual, like Bridgeport type stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, obviously they had CNC stuff back then, but I guess it was probably because I was taking like entry-level machining classes, because if you wanted to get into the CNC stuff, I think, you know, it pretty much had to be your major to sign up and pursue that. So,
right.
But yeah, and I still to this day, I don't have any CNC milling experience. I actually have a old CNC mill that I got for next to nothing, and something's wrong with it. I've never got it going yet, but maybe one day I will, and I'll figure out how to use it.
Well, I think that anybody that goes into machining, you know, I mean, to me, it appears that like CNC machines, if you can program, or, you know, program the design into it, and maybe I'm using the wrong terminology because I don't use any of that kind of stuff, that it pretty much comes down to that you're a programmer, where
Right.
a machinist to me is somebody that can sit down and run the manual lathes and machines and understand the processes you have to go through to get to the final product. Where, you know, a CNC machine, you know, it's once you've got that CAD drawing and all the measurements in there and it's all 3D'd or whatever, you know, and you put the numbers in, it just does it.
Yeah, machine can do the work for you. I mean, there's definitely an art to manual machining. After I graduated college, I went to work at the Badlands machine shop, which, you know, was basically a fab shop, but we did a lot of machining there too. I mean,
Right.
we machined axle shafts and all kinds of stuff, but we had some nice equipment, but it was all manual equipment there too. Well, one of the guys, I guess technically the main guy, when I started working there, was this guy named Rob, and his background before he went to work at the Badlands was he was a machinist. He had probably worked as a machinist for 15 plus years. I think maybe his dad even owned a machine shop. So he was an excellent machinist, and I learned a ton from working there and working with him. And just, because I got to use the equipment, and when you're interested in learning, your boss is cool enough to let you just use the equipment to do side projects. I mean, I had tons of hands-on experience just figuring all this stuff out on my own. And yeah, it's certainly like anything, you can learn stuff in school, but there's tons of stuff that you just learn with experience, and that's the only way you're going to.
Right.
And it's crazy to think that now I've got almost 20 years of experience doing it.
Yeah, I get it. My dad started off at the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard and ended up working his way for 38 years in the federal government and retired at 55, but he got up as high as what they call model maker.
Mm.
And so he went through, the machinist grades, and then to a tool and die, and then into the last level that he had was, like I said, was model maker. But everything that he did was on manual machines,
Right.
and he could figure that stuff out. And the detail and quality that he produced, I've never had the patience to. It's like I tell everybody, I can build an awesome deck, but don't ask me to do finished carpentry. There's
Right.
just no way. And the same thing with just about anything. I know the detail and I know it should be there. I just don't have the patience.
Yeah, there's, I mean, I'm certainly not incredible machinist. I'm good and I'm capable, but you look at some of the intricate projects that machinists like doing just for hobbyists. I'm sure you've seen stuff like where guys make a whole like V8 engine that actually functions and has all the tiny little parts, and
Yep.
just for fun, for something to do. And it's just a different mentality that some machinists have that just really enjoy the fine detail work of things.
Your college years, and you said that was, what was the name of the school again?
Ferris State University.
Ferris State. Okay. And then after you graduated there, what was your next step?
So I don't know. Well, you probably remember, but it was, so I graduated in 2003, but in 2002, I went to the Top Truck Challenge,
Right.
the four-wheeler magazine thing. And I had never done anything. I'd never really done anything like it. I mean, I'm trying to think. That might have been the first. I think it probably was the first off-road competition that I did. I know I did like a tough truck race or two after, but I don't know. There was something about it that, I went to that. and I was just hooked on the competition part of it. Oh, I guess I did some competitive mud bogs a few times before the Top Truck Challenge.
Okay.
But I just really enjoyed it. And I kind of told myself, like, this is definitely something I'm interested in. I want to pursue doing more of these competition things, which at the time, what was it? It was like a Bob Hazel thing. The Ramsey like challenge events. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he had Warren and BFG. Each year he had a different like marquee sponsor. For some of those events, and then he turned it into Pro Rock. But
yeah, so he was doing some in like Arkansas, and I think he did one at the Badlands maybe. And they weren't just rock crawling; they were running through the woods and up some hill climbs and through some mud and through some rocks or whatever. But I thought that stuff was really interesting. I never did it, but I remember Kenny Bloom was one of the guys that was doing it at the time. But I was thinking to myself, maybe that's what I want to do once I graduate and have the opportunity to do more stuff. But I ended up graduating and trying to find a job, and I had made some connections through the Top Truck Challenge, and I'd actually talked to Jack from CTM maybe about going to work for him, and I talked to Toby Lavender about going to work for him in Southern California. I was just trying to consider some options, and I had applied and talked to Troy Myers from the Badlands, and they ended up hiring me about a month or month and a half after I graduated college. And that was like 6 hours from my house, from my home where I grew up in Attica, Indiana. And it to be honest, I don't know. There's a lot of things in my life that I feel like I've been extremely fortunate that things just went right. Things just worked out,
Right.
And so I don't know that there could have possibly been a better place for me to go work. And I mean, I just had the opportunity to learn so much and do so many things. So I went to work there, and I mean, we were almost exclusively just building buggies. We did some other jobs, but I mean, I think like 6 months after I started working there, we were building a new car for Ken Shute, who was like, 2002 Supercrawl world champion. And it was like mind blowing to me. I was like, I can't believe I'm going to work on this car for Ken Shute, And so we built a ton of cars though. And Troy was competing for the first, I got there in 2003, and last year he competed with 2005. But, so we're building a car or two for Troy every year. And then, man, we built so many cars for so many people. We built a few for Rusty Bray, Ken Bloom, and Matt Dees. Yeah, I'm sure you could think of some too, possibly, but man, it was kind of a blur. We did dozens of cars in the time that I was there.
So what was your first rock crawl?
So, and keep in mind at this time I still wasn't like super into rock crawling. The only time I'd ever actually rock crawled was at the Top Truck Challenge, and this was a year later. Okay. So 2003 July, I moved there like on the 4th of July, and I'm trying to think. Troy had told me I was so eager to go work there. He basically told me like, well, there's a competition coming up in 3 weeks. If you want to come up here and maybe watch that and check it out, see if you kind of want to work. I was like, I will come. I can be there tomorrow. You want me to move up this weekend? I'll just move up there this weekend, whatever and which I get it. He was hesitant. I ended up like making a trip there as a job interview essentially. And I brought my willies with me, which this is, some good info for anyone that wants to get into the industry. But, I brought my willies with me. I wanted to kind of go do some wheeling, but part of it was I wanted them to see something that I'd built, so they could see it in person and, have an idea of what I was capable of, because anyone can tell you how great they are, but, show me your work, like show me what you can actually do or what you've accomplished, not just tell me about it,
Exactly. It was your portfolio.
So, right. Yeah. Which, that was kind of a piece of crap really when I look back and think about it in some ways, but, you got to give people credit that actually are getting something done versus people that are just talking about getting things done,
Absolutely.
And so I built something, and there, had it with me for them to see. But so I don't know what day that was. That was sometime in June that I went down there, and I think 2 weeks later I was down there to start working. But I was only there for 1 week, and then there was a E-Rock competition, and never seen a rock crawling event in person before. Didn't really know much about it. Well, there was a guy that worked there that ran the concession stand, which, man, I can't remember. Oh, I think maybe I mentioned this in another interview, and Nate Hurst was joking about it. There was a guy named Hot Dog Mike that
Hot Dog Mike.
Yeah, Mike Hope, and the guys jokingly called him Hot Dog Mike because he ran the concession stand. But anyway, Hot Dog Mike asked me. He said his dad normally spots for him, and he wasn't going to be able to make it. And he asked me if I would spot for him, and I was like, I don't know anything about this. I've never seen it, and I don't know the rules, nothing. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. My buddy was going to spot for me. He doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know anything about four-wheeling. At least you kind of have an idea. And so I spotted for him, and I was hooked. I mean, I was so pumped up about it. I couldn't believe how cool it was. The whole event was just awesome. Yeah, it was kind of a funny coincidence how it all worked out, because I spotted for him that event, and then the next event was in Jellico, and I was just going to go down and watch. And his dad got in a car accident, not a serious car accident, but his dad got in a car accident on his way to meet us, and told him, like, I'm not going to be able to go. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to go. This just happened. And so he looked at me and goes, you want to spot for me? I was like, hell yeah. And so there I was, spotting for him again. And then we went to Supercrawl. I was going to go to Supercrawl. It was in St. George. And Mike Smythe needed a spotter. You remember him?
Yep.
Yeah. Mike Smythe didn't have a spotter. And so I spotted for him. And it was like a year and a half, or over a year, I think, before I actually went to an event and just spectated. So, yeah, I think next year, 2004, I competed in 2 events that were at the Badlands in my Willies, and didn't do very well, which, once in a while I get people that ask me, they're like, how did you do when you first started competing? Horrible. I did horrible. Which we don't even have enough competitors that anyone could finish as poorly as I was,
Right.
I was not in the top 25 in my first 2 events. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn. It's not just, you don't just show up and figure it out the first time.
No, you don't. And that's one of the things that I see a lot of people jump into it, thinking, okay, they consider themselves a great trail wheeler, and then they get into competition and they don't understand the strategy, how the point systems really work, they get given information that they don't understand, and so then they're really confused. So yeah, I see it all. We see it all the time, of course.
Yeah, it's certainly a different mentality for the average trail wheeler. It's funny, I was watching a video earlier today, a guy that was at Fordyce and going up this climb that actually did a good job getting up it, but he pulled up and he was a little too far to the side and he just backed up and lined up again. I was like, oh, you could have just front dug and not had to back up. And for me, and probably a lot of other guys that compete, it kind of drives you crazy. Like, you're backing up. Why are you backing up? It's like admitting failure,
I do the same thing, and I don't compete. I count backups when I drive the Rubicon.
Yeah.
It's. I can remember one time, Shane Yost was in front of me, and this is way back in the early days, and he had a couple of friends with him in different rigs, and every time he took a backup, I'd yell, "Back up!" And one of his friends goes, "Man, that guy's an asshole. Who is he?" And he goes, "Oh, that's Big Rich from Cal Rocks. Just don't worry about it." And the guy just didn't understand.
Right.
But I was an asshole back then, so that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
So then, what was the first car that you owned?
Well, I guess it's hard to. I had that Toyota that I took the Top Truck Challenge, which was really a piece of crap. It'd be fun to see that again because it's been like over 20 years since I built it. It'd be fun to look at it and have a laugh at some of the stuff that I did. I know some of it was decent, but some of it was, like, what the hell? This is terrible. But so, I had that, but then I built my Willys that I started working on my Willys, I think in 1999.
Okay.
Or maybe it was 2001. I think that's what it was. Started working on it in 2001 and it was super low budget. I basically bought a wrecked Toyota truck for $450, and then a friend of mine gave me a frame in a Willys tub, and it was really junky Willys tub, and I just did a ton of work to it to make it look decent. And I got all that stuff for free. I ran stock leaf springs and put all the Toyota drivetrain in it, and that was how that started. And right away, I had more fun with that than my big dumb truck because it was just easy to drive places and it was nimble and, small and still super capable. But it was pretty crappy. The frame bent when I raced it at a tough truck race and ended up completely rebuilding it, building a new frame for it. This was when I was in college. Built a new frame for it out of box tube and stick welded it together. And it's funny that Willys is, and that would have been like 2002-ish, 3, right in that winter when I was rebuilding it. And that frame is still under that Willys today, and it's still got some of the original stick welds, and still got the original motor from the wrecked Toyota truck that I bought.
Really?
And yeah, I rebuilt it once. I think I rebuilt the motor in like 2007. But yeah, that thing definitely has some history. That was what I first competed in. So I moved to the Badlands. I had that, and it actually had Dana 44 axles with rear steer for maybe a year until I broke stuff enough times that I put junkyard 60s in it, and it had rear steer still with the 60s. It hasn't had rear steer in like 17 years now though. But yeah, so when the first event that I competed in, I had 37-inch sticky tires on it at the time, but I had Dana 60s and I had rear steer. So I was in the unlimited class. I had like a 92-inch wheelbase, but it didn't fare very well, but yeah, I competed 2 times in my Willies, didn't do well either time, and decided to build a buggy. And so I ended up basically parting the Willies out, taking not everything out of it, but everything that I thought would be worth using, like the axles. I took tires and wheels, axles, seats and shocks and links and all that stuff, but left the drivetrain. And I built my first buggy. And I was actually just thinking about this the other day. So I know there's a lot of times where people are not very good at being self-motivated to figure things out on their own.
Right.
And, people may ask me, like, how'd you learn how to do this or that or whatever? Like, how'd you learn how to do tube work? Well, I worked at Badlands, and I kind of learned a little bit. I learned some, right? And then, I'd been there a year, I guess, before I decided to build my buggy. And we had a guy that built the chassis, so it's not like I had a ton of experience bending tube. But, I talked to my boss, and I said, hey, can I use the chassis table for a little bit so I could build the chassis for myself? And he okayed it, and I asked the guy that was doing all the chassis, I said, hey, do you think you could hang out after work one night and, kind of help me help me get started on building this chassis? And he said, yeah, I'd probably do that. He probably stayed for like 12 minutes and was like, well, I think you can figure this out. Looks like he was kind of a dick, but he was like, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to figure it out. So yeah, it's not that hard. So good luck. And so, I just had to figure it out. No one was going to hold my hand and show me step by step how to get it done. I just had to do it. And it worked out decent. I mean, it's not my best looking buggy I've ever built, but it was a pretty good car.
So who spotted for you the first 2 events that you did in your Willies? Do you remember?
Well, one of the 2 events, I think it might have been the second event, was Hot Dog Mike.
Okay.
And then the other one was a local kid, and he wasn't very good. But then I can't remember. I think the third event also. So I ended up getting that buggy done for the last event of the year. It was like the New Rock finals, and went to Pennsylvania. You've seen it a bunch of times now. Someone rushes to get their car built and shows up at an event, and it's a disaster. Like, it breaks down over and over again. There's a bunch of stuff wrong with it. And that's pretty much how my first event in that car went. So the next season, like, I got everything figured out on the car over the winter, and the next season, the first event was the first We Rock, the first East Coast We Rock, 2005, at the Badlands. And Brian Howard was spotting for me, which Brian was a friend of mine that worked with me at the Badlands. I wanted him to spot for me before, but he couldn't because he was committed to spot for other people. So,
okay.
But yeah, he started spotting for me in 2005, and I remember I was so nervous that first event. Our first obstacle, a link mount ended up breaking. I couldn't make the first climb, and broke something. Didn't really have a good way to fix it, and missed the whole first day, which was totally a bummer. But then for day 2, there was no pressure. We were, obviously weren't going to do well. We were missed 4 courses already. And
right.
So, I know everyone does this, especially when they get started into it. You start looking at your scores when you get done and go, I know we screwed up those 8 courses, but those other 2 we did decent. And I looked at our scores at the end of the day, and I'm like, man, we were like top 5 compared to everyone else out of probably had 25 cars or something at the time. So it was kind of promising. Like, hey, man, we might actually be able to do decent this year. And yeah, I mean, a few more events after that. Well, there was one more event at the Badlands that year, and I actually did really well there. I think I got 4th at the next event. And then you probably surely remember the next event was the first We Rock in Jellico, and that was where I broke my back.
Okay.
I don't know how well you remember that. I know Lil Rich was there because he was the one that came over. I mean, I got hurt in the middle of the course, and I just decided to finish the course, and I knew I was hurt pretty bad. And I remember kind of calling him over and talking to him and telling him definitely needed medical attention, But do you remember that?
I don't. I'm sorry to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't. I there's a few injuries that happened that I remember. There was out at Jellico, somebody one of the spotters blew his ankle out or knee out. I remember that. I remember Kim when she hurt her back at the Badlands, and then also when Chris Durham hurt his back at the Badlands.
Yep.
Those were the 3 that really stood out in those early days.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I left that event. I think it was our last course of the first day, maybe, or second to last. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I left in the ambulance, and then eventually got sent by helicopter to University of Tennessee. And I mean, luckily, it wasn't serious or too serious. I was in a back brace for 6 weeks. It actually worked out okay. And
was it a compression fracture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had 3 fractured vertebrae. But I think the next event was next V-Rock was in Columbus, and I wasn't supposed to drive yet, so Brian drove and I spotted. And that was an event where there weren't, it was a man-made course. There wasn't any rocks to stack or anything. So, I mean, I don't know. I only ended up missing one event, really, and I was spotting. So,
and it was Grand Nationals at the Rock
Columbus,
there at Columbus. Yeah.
You know what's funny? I'm buying some Hummer spindles from a guy that lives, I can't remember, pretty close to Columbus. I think he said an hour from Columbus. Well, he's not into rock crawling or anything like that. And he told me, this was just 3 or 4 days ago I talked to him. He said, years ago, we went to this rock crawling thing in Columbus, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And he was describing it, and I was like, holy crap, yeah. I was there. I know what you're talking about.
That was an interesting event site for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there was some cool stuff about it for sure. I mean, I don't know. There were some neat things. They had like the man-made trees. You remember that? They had the telephone poles in the ground. I mean, some of that stuff was really cool. Cool stuff that, I don't know. There's some good obstacles there too. But
when Little Rich and I first went to go look at that place, the dude that owned the property, Guy was his name. He goes, we'd looked at the property, and it was like, it wasn't usable. There was nothing that could be climbed. There was nothing. I mean, it was all just round tube and concreted together, and there was nothing. We told him, there's nothing we can do here.
Who had made it?
He had designed it, and had some people put it together because he had a lot of property that equipment, and they did the cargo containers, shipping containers, off of trains and onto the cars, or onto the trailers, and he built they built the trailers, and he had lots of warehouse storage all across that area. But he was pretty much a jackass, and I told him, I said, well, this isn't usable. And he goes, well, I spent $1 million. And I said, well, okay, think of it this way. For $1 million, you could have had Augusta National. Instead, you got yourself a pitch and putt or whatever, And I said, you don't have anything here. I said, why don't you listen to what my son has to say, and then, let's do some work on this site. And he goes, I'm not listening to no 17-year-old or whatever Rich was at the time, And I said, well, then, you're not going to have anything. You've built this that nobody can use. And finally he conceded, and we did it. And, we added stuff to it, and we gave recommendations, and they did. But man, that guy was a pain in the ass to work with the whole time.
Yeah, I certainly heard the stories.
So you did really well that year at that Grand Nationals.
Yeah.
You won it, didn't you?
Yeah. And, each event that year, we had done a little bit better each event, but there was always something that happened where, broke apart, or just something didn't work out right, And so we ended up, I think we finished the series in like third, I think third that year, but we didn't, we were never on the podium for one of the We Rock events. I think my best finish was the weekend before We Rock was the New Rock finals. And I know this was something you were bitter about, was U Rock moved their event date, which I understand why. It ended up being they did Supercrawl at SEMA, right?
Right.
And so you had like the New Rock finals in Pennsylvania one weekend, and then the next weekend was We Rock in Columbus, which was a date that you had established probably
the year before.
Well before.
Right.
Yeah. And then, at some point, who knows, May or something, U-Rock announced that Supercrawl was going to be the weekend before SEMA, which, totally kind of screwed you over in a way, as far as
put three events
West
in a row.
Coast guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to get, hard to get East Coast guys, and super hard to get West Coast guys too, because, they're not going to want to go back and forth for 2 weekends in a row.
True.
Especially if they're going to be gone to go to SEMA. So anyway, I didn't have a lot of money to work with at the time. Certainly didn't have any sponsors, and was making $14 an hour at the Badlands. And, I went to that first event, and I pretty much told myself, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to afford to make it to all these events, but I'll figure it out somehow, borrow money or whatever, or win money. And so I went to Pennsylvania, got second, won like $1,000 or something, and then went to We Rock, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like in some ways, of all my events that I've won over the years, that was one that would be near the top of events that I probably didn't deserve to win.
Because Randy's showing in the shootout.
Yeah. We had a good weekend,
right.
But yeah, right at the end, Randy Torbert was in first. And I mean, it's insane, like to look at what happened. But I think the rule back then was you just had to break the plane of the finish gate, not right. 2 tires or anything. You just had to break the plane. And Randy went off this drop off right towards the finish gate, right next to the finish gate. And he accidentally pushed his hand down into reverse when I think he said he had his hand on the shifter. And when he hit the ground, he bumped his car into reverse and floored it. And the car, like if he would have done nothing, if he would have shut the car off in midair, it would have gone out the finish gate.
Right.
And he threw it in reverse, and the car like got probably within like a foot of the finish gate, and then went backwards and flipped over. And I mean, it was crazy.
Right onto the lid.
Yeah.
Right on the roof. Yep.
Yeah. So, not that. Yeah.
And I think what it was is that he didn't have the detents in there, so he could get it into reverse real easy, and he had that big old like heavy metal skull or whatever it was as a shift knob. And I think when he hit, it just dropped. I think it just dropped in there, if I remember right. And then he hit the gas thinking he was on the front wheels and in drive, and instead it was reverse, and it just flipped him over.
Yep. And, at the time, Randy was the defending world champion, Supercrawl champion from the year before.
Right.
Which he had, Randy had a few phenomenal years. He was certainly the man to beat for a while there. And so, I was a little lucky that I won that one.
And it gave you enough money to be able to go to Supercrawl then.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too was, Vince Gokenauer, he still participates a little bit, but Vince and his brother were going to Supercrawl, and they must have had a 2-place trailer or something. And they towed my buggy out, and they told me I could just, pay him back when I got the money, which was, they've always been super good dudes.
Yes.
Which, I still didn't really have the money to drive all the way to Vegas and back. I don't think I had a truck and trailer reliable enough to do it either. So
it all worked out.
Yeah, I didn't do well at that Supercrawl. I think I got like 19th, but 19th out of like 60 or whatever it was.
Yeah, there was a lot of cars there.
Yeah.
What is the most memorable event for you?
Man, it's funny because you think about like memorable moments from events. I mean, there's certainly some good events that over the years, and I don't know why. There's certain memories that you don't know why they stand out so much. But one that stands out was the last time that you guys went to Jellico and did like originally you were going to do, I remember at least Lil Rich telling me the story that you guys were going to do $5 a carload, because you were starting to see a little bit of a decline in attendance at Jellico because it was getting played out. There was just, not just you guys having events there, but like New Rock had events there. U-Rock had events there. And the owner said he didn't want to do $5 a carload. He wanted to do at least $5 a person. So you guys charged $5 a person instead of $15. And I mean, the crowd there was huge. And I remember, I didn't even do that well. That was one of the events where the poop chute was the finale, which was an awesome obstacle. So this would have been, it would have been 2006.
Okay.
I mean, this was an awesome event. So this is the one, well, I'll get to that in a second. But so the shootout, like right near the beginning of the shootout, there was a big climb. And I remember, I mean, it's hard enough that Kenny Bloom just pulled in and winched it because he didn't think anyone was going to make it. And this was top 6 in the shootout. I think I was 5th. And so I went in And I tried that climb like probably 3 times. On the 4th time, I made it, full throttle, like up this climb. And I remember being on the throttle, full throttle, making it up, cresting the top of this climb. And I could hear the crowd like screaming over my motor. You know what I mean? It was louder than my car was. And the whole shootout course was lined, and it was a pretty big perimeter, but the whole shootout course was lined at least 3 people deep around the whole thing.
Right.
And I ended up cartwheeling down the poop chute. And then I think the next 2 guys didn't even make it up the first climb, Brad Stiles and Marty Hart. And then I think like Matt Dees, I can't remember who all, I mean, there were so many good teams back then. I think Matt Dees might have been in second. He rolled down the poop chute. And you know who won? You remember? Shannon.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So I don't know if you remember that. Seeing him do it, there's still a YouTube video of it. He ends up like getting a run at it and just like going sideways through the poop chute, like full throttle, and just dropping off of it like at a 45-degree angle, like off camber. And he like nose wheelied out and like drove across the finish line. I mean, it was awesome. But actually, I think for some reason he had already won. And I remember him asking, like you'd see it in the video. He's like, "Can I still do this?" They're like, yeah, if you want. And so he just did it just for fun, even though he already had a big enough lead because Matt rolled. But it was cool.
Do you remember Shannon and Nick? Nick lined Shannon up in the shootout, and when Shannon started the course, he hit the start cone and then spent like 15 or 20 minutes trying to run Nick over and ended up blowing the motor.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I do. It was classic. I mean, he didn't even care about the shootout at that point. He was going to run Nick over, and Nick, I think, was laughing the whole time trying to, as he was running from him.
I think that was in Jellico in the rain, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That was actually the year after I moved. That was 2008, because I remember watching the videos of it. I remember one of the best Shannon Campbell highlights I remember was 2008 at Grand Nationals in Hannibal. There was this climb on the backside of one of the courses. I think a couple people ended up making it, but literally like maybe 2 out of everyone. And I mean, I was hitting it as hard as I could and could not make it. And Shannon pulls in and he asks the judges, "Can I go down here?" And it was just a road. And like he went and drove down the road and turned around, and like the road was perpendicular to the climb. And he like came down the road hauling ass to get enough momentum to make it up the climb, and just like came down the road and like hung a left and just 90 degrees up this wall. It was amazing. But only a handful of people probably saw it because it was back in the woods behind a course, but I got to watch it.
When you left Indiana and the Badlands, you went to work for Schaefer, is that correct?
Yep.
And that was, I remember Mike going, "Man, I need to find somebody that can fabricate, somebody that can build cars," because he was having people come in and help and be there for a week or so, like Rogie and Adam and just different people in and out. And I remember Rich going, "I got a guy," and calling you, and so that you guys hooked up.
Yeah, I think that was, if I remember right, that was a conversation that happened at Jeepers Jamboree.
Yep, it was.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember Rich calling me and talking to me about it and telling me Mike Schaefer wanted to talk to me. And it's kind of funny because after Mike was interested in hiring me and talked to me about it, then he kind of got hesitant about doing it. And I kind of understood why, but I also didn't really at the time. The reason he was hesitant to hire me and have me come out across the country to do it was because, you know, I'm moving across the country to go take this job, and he doesn't really know me or anything. He doesn't know how well it's going to work out. And if it doesn't work out, he's going to feel bad. And
Right.
I can totally relate now because I get people all the time. I've had tons of people that have offered to move from Vermont or Alabama or wherever to come work for me. And it's like, man, I don't know that I want that responsibility of, you know, knowing that I'm the reason that you're moving out here. And it's a big commitment, obviously, you know, what if it doesn't work out? So, you know, that was how Mike felt. I actually had to talk him into it after he originally was pursuing me about it. So, and I don't know, you know, I was moving out here because I wanted to. It wasn't necessarily for the job. It was, hey, just give me a job so I can move out there. I don't care. I'll figure it.
Right. It was a stepping stone.
Yeah, if it doesn't work out, I'll figure something out. But, and realistically, I don't know that it worked out that great. I only worked there for 8 months, maybe 6 months. I pretty much came out, built the Torchmate rock crawling buggy.
Right.
Bill Kuntz buggy. And it was probably like a month after we finished it that I quit. So, because I went to work for Torchmate.
Yep, that I remember. So what was it like working at Torchmate?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was interesting because I started there, and it wasn't the beginning of the company, but it was the beginning of some major changes. At the time, they were a somewhat small company, and they were building all their tables were just bolt together kits, and they would just order the parts from a company, you know, that would make the bolt together kits for them, basically.
Right.
And they had built a few like big weld together tables, or sold a few, but they had some company in Tennessee or something that was building them for them. And so the reason he hired me was because he wanted me to help them develop these products to build in-house. And so, you know, that's what I did. I mean, when I started there, they just had a shop that was literally empty, or just had like some random stuff stored back there. He's like, what all we need to get? Make me a list of everything we need to get. So I, you know, said, we need to get this, we need to get that. And so, yeah.
So you got to draw up your own Christmas list.
Yeah. I'm still friends with Bill to this day, but I made this list and gave him a list of all this stuff, and I'd be like, we need a lathe like this. It's like $12,000, and then like we got like a $1,200 lathe, and there was a lot of stuff like that which I understand. You know, I probably didn't want the initial investment of $200,000 shop supplies, but yeah, we started, and I was the only fabricator for quite a while, maybe even 6 months, and then we slowly hired a few more people, and it was a pretty crazy thing. But he ended up like building or developing like this dream team of fabricators, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, but we had all these fabricators that were like guys that were really good, experienced off-road fabricators, and we were just there building like Torchmate tables. And so we ended up, the most notable thing that we ended up doing was building that Torchmate TTB car, which was a super cool project, a super cool experience. I don't know that, I would like to think that one day I'll work on a project like that again. But, the way it was, we had, I'm trying to think, it was 4 or 5 extremely good fabricators that were working on the car. And everyone was good enough that, they could handle, everyone had different tasks, but, you would look at something that one of the other guys did and you'd say, man, that looks good. I don't think I would have done it any differently. And that's hard to find guys at that skill level,
Oh, absolutely. Because most of them are shop owners, at least for some period of time.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It just all worked out. I think at the time, Torchmate had, pretty decent pay, and then, benefits of working at a actual company where you had health insurance and all that stuff. Most of us were guys that were coming from working at a fab shop where you were making okay money, but there was no benefits,
Right.
And so this was like the next step in growing up a little bit. but yeah, it was a cool experience. And I don't know if you saw that Bill bought that car back and owns it again, which is super cool.
JT had the car because JT drove it there for a while.
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately for JT, what happened was JT bought that car, and I can't remember the timeline for sure, but it might have been like 3 months after JT bought it, when JT had the intent to buy it and race it. Dave asked him to help him, work for Ultra 4. And
right.
So he's been working for Ultra 4 ever since. So obviously he has not been racing in Ultra 4. So yeah, kind of bummer he got the car and never got to race it, other than some stuff, Nora or whatever.
Yeah, Nora, and he did some hill climbs, I think. And
yeah.
From there, you went into business for yourself, correct? From Torchmate?
Yeah. At some point. Well, I certainly know it wasn't Bill's fault, but he sold the company to Lincoln, and things certainly changed at Torchmate after Lincoln took over, and it just wasn't the same kind of thing anymore.
Right.
And so, yeah, it made it tough. Lincoln wanted you to work more hours, and I was getting to the point where I was trying to do fab work from home. I actually built, whatever it was, 2011, I think. I built a car for Rusty Bray that he raced in King of the Hammers that year and the next year. So I built part of that at Torchmate, not during business hours, but built some of it at Torchmate, some of it at my house. I was trying to slowly get my foot in the door, I guess, to, establish something where I had the possibility of starting my own business.
Right.
So, yeah, I was doing projects at home, and so when they were trying to get us to work more hours at Torchmate, it just made it, 50 hours a week at Torchmate, and then 30 or 40 hours a week at home. It was just a bit much. So, yeah, eventually I just decided. I ended up getting a couple jobs lined up to do a buggy build, and a build for a rolling chassis, and before I quit. And then finally I was like, you know what, now's the time. And it's something that's hard and not something that I felt like, you know, how there's things that you feel like maybe you're never going to be ready for, and someone pretty much has to like kick you out the door. That was, yeah, that was that situation where I was like, I'm not happy working here anymore. I just gotta, this is it. I gotta
make it.
You gotta make it happen. So
I know that you've built a lot of buggies for a lot of people. You've worked on a lot of different projects. You guys, I know you worked with Drew in putting together a goat-built / Jesse Haines fab. That was a 2-seater chassis, correct?
yeah.
And then you've been building your single-seaters, and then you went to the rear engine, and then you came up with, I know that there's probably other products that you came up with, but the thing that has really exploded and pushed the envelope, you might say, in rock crawling are the portal boxes.
Yeah. And, I mean, I think it all goes hand in hand, but I think, if someone came out with portals 5 years ago or whatever, it was 6 years ago when I made them, started selling them. If someone just came out with just the axles, not putting them on a car, not proving anything about them, I don't know that it would have changed much, because we've had portal axles before.
Right.
I mean, ours are more well packaged than something like a Unimog axle. Obviously, I mean those are, our stuff is pretty compact and pretty simple and relatively light, and it's easy to work with. But still, when I made the first designs of all that stuff, the number of people that told me it wasn't going to work, I mean, it was like, and I had definitely done my homework on it. I felt confident that this stuff was going to work. I knew it was going to work. So, when all these people were telling me why it's not going to work and that this is not right, this won't hold up, like, okay, well, I've been researching this stuff for quite a while. I've seen it in person. I've seen how it works and what we can do with it. But without me actually proving it, what would we have? So, slowly, I remember the first year that I did it, I was hearing rumors that the only reason that it's holding up is because I rebuild all of it after every event or something. And I'm like, dude, I don't work on any of this stuff. Like, I work on it as little as possible. So, yeah, I mean, some people were ready to jump on board right away. Like, I think James Tracy was one of the guys that loved the idea right from the start, liked the idea and was interested in getting some. But there was certainly other people that were not convinced. And even with me having the stuff work great for years, they'd say, well, yeah, it holds up for you, but okay. But yeah, so slowly, it's developed a reputation, and it has proven itself to work.
I think there's lot more of them out there on trail rigs than there are on comp buggies.
It's got to be, yeah. I would say you're probably right. I have lost track for sure. There's well over, I'd say there's got to be 60 plus cars right now. The last time I counted was, over 50 cars, and I'm not even including just 50 sets sold. I mean, this is like 50 cars
that have
I know
completed.
Of that people are driving, are out on the trail. So Yeah, I mean, there's tons of them in use, and we've refined many things over the years. The stuff that, the first version of stuff versus what we have now it's a big difference. And some people know about it. Some people, probably most people don't, but the supply of this stuff it's drying up. And, I feel like I'm got to be somewhat responsible for that. Just over the past 2 or 3 weeks, even, I mean, I've been getting on eBay was a huge source, not for the complete assemblies, but for the parts for them, the gears and spindles and seals and all kinds of stuff. And I have bought so much of that stuff over the past 5 or 6 years. And I mean, it's almost gone now. And the prices on it, because the stuff's almost gone, the prices are outrageous, 3 or 4 times what they were 5 years ago. So I knew this over a year ago, came to the realization that I'm going to run out of this stuff and I've got to have a backup plan. So we've been working on it for, I guess it was after Trail Hero last winter, we really started working on developing a new portal case that's built completely from scratch. So new castings, and Tom from PSC has helped me with that some. And he hasn't really played a big role in any of the development of it, but the big thing was putting me in contact with the right people. So we've been working with a casting engineer that worked at Edelbrock for 30 years. And he's awesome. And working with his guys that do the tool design, and they know foundries to work with, and these are guys that I trust them because I know other people that trust them. And I trust that guy, I
Right.
trust Tom. These are places that do the design work on his steering boxes or do the tool design for his parts or whatever. But my initial goal was to have 100% new portals by June. That didn't happen. And then my goal was to have the first set ready by Trail Hero. And it's hard to say. I mean, I may get sample pieces by then, but I can't say for sure. And some people have seen the design. Some people have seen the 3D print for the parts. Some people have seen the solid models of the stuff, but it's not something that I'm openly sharing with anyone until it's done. And it's, I hate to say it, but I've been a bit surprised, and it's been an eye-opening experience, just like seeing how people will openly rip off your designs and your parts. And it's frustrating. I mean, I hate it because we've come up with developments of our portal box that we've refined all these parts to it. And I would love to show people, we've done this to it and changed this. And, people would be impressed by the thought that goes into some of the design work. But I don't want to talk about it because it's just making it easier for other people to copy the stuff. And it's like, it's just frustrating.
Oh, it's a big deal in our industry, and I would imagine a lot of industries are the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know once we get to the point where, well, if the portal supply, they're a lot harder to get to or to find right now. So, I mean, if people want to copy them, that's fine, but they're not going to come up with 500 salvage portal boxes probably at a cheap price. And I would guess I've sold, over 600 boxes is what it seems like. I found them all for cheap. I don't think anyone's going to find them that kind of quantity for a cheap price anymore. But I mean, our casting and all the parts that go with it, all the parts we've developed, it's an expensive project, and I knew it would be. I mean, I've been planning for it and saving in the expectation that this was going to happen. So it's not like some garage backyard fabricator is going to copy the new castings or anything like that.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into it, and having the connections with the right people. And, the reality is I don't mind people copying some of my ideas and building stuff for themselves. But yeah, it definitely goes farther than that, though,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember at SEMA when they went in and got rid of a whole bunch of vendors and locked all their stuff up, told them to get out the door because they had everything that they were selling was a ripoff of American companies. And it was a lot of ripoff at that point. But and your stuff, I mean, it becomes a, I can totally understand it because you got so much money invested and time invested in the process, and to come up with all new parts that are going to work, and then somebody comes along and just says, "Here, make a copy of this," and it's not going to be
that. What I've realized, well, there's a couple things that I've realized about this whole process. Coming up with the ideas is one thing. I mean, that's an important part of it, obviously. Coming up with good ideas that work. But the other key element to it is not just coming up with the ideas that work. It's coming up with a way to produce your ideas. Right. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Just for example, right now, we've been building salvage portal boxes. We've taken the cases and we modify the cases and machine this and that. And I mean, it actually takes, like the employees that do that, it actually takes very little training to show someone how to do this stuff, because we have fixtures that make it so easy. And if people saw the fixtures, they can copy the fixtures, and it's so easy for them to do it. But it's like the fixtures to make the parts is such a key element to making it happen. Kyle Listel in Salt Lake City, he's built a ton of the inner C's for me. He's got a fixture. At one time, he actually posted a video of him making an inner C, and I asked him to take it down because people could see the fixture and people could see some of the process, and it's like, that's the stuff that, like, we can't have people seeing, because you can look at someone's part and measure it, but there's so much more that goes into replicating it than just looking at the,
at the finished product
measurement from, So, but yeah, it's coming up with ideas, like great ideas is one thing, but it's the thing that's so frustrating about it is it's so easy to copy someone's idea, because they'll look at it and go, "Oh, you just do this." And it's like, yeah, well, it was kind of hard to figure that out, but I mean, you see it, that's what it is. And so, and you can't really stop it. And I've just realized that,
not unless you have a huge team of lawyers and a lot of money behind you.
Yeah. So, and no one has copied anything on a big enough scale where it's going to take away from what I'm doing, and that's fine. But I just realized that you have to stay one step ahead of what other people are doing, and when they're, you know, trying to reproduce what you've made, you're already, you know, moved on to the next revision of it, you know.
You've made it better than what it was, and they're still making it to that old version because they don't know they don't know what the new version should be.
Yeah.
Because they haven't gone through the process.
Which kind of makes me think of the hydraulic shocks that I just put on my car.
Yeah, I got asked about that earlier, and I don't know when it was that you when you first put them on, but somebody asked me, and in fact, it wasn't even a competitor; it was somebody at the event, and I said, "No, those are that'll be fine. That in unlimited, that's not a problem. I think we outlawed them in Pro Mod, but I think they're good in unlimited." And then somebody else asked me, and I told them the same thing, and that was a competitor. And then, and I think that was in Colorado. And then when you messaged me today, I was like, okay, I'll just copy the rule book and put it up there for all those that don't read the rule book.
Yeah. Well, you know, what motivated me was, or what made me come up with this idea, which basically what happened was in Cedar City, I got second, got beat by Dave Long. And, you know, it was like, there was a couple more obstacles that it wasn't just two things, but two obstacles throughout the weekend that he basically beat me on. They were both breakover angles, and he made these bonuses, and I hit the cone on both of them, and I think we were the only two that even attempted or made either one. Well, you know, I thought a lot about things after that event, because one of the things that's happened over the past 3, 4, 5 years, I guess, is, you know, I've started building more cars for other people. So other guys in the unlimited class are running comparable cars. And at this point, like, Dave Wong's car is almost identical to my car, other than the motor's a little different. But other than that, I mean, he's got every advantage, like, that I have.
Right.
And so the thing that in some ways is frustrating for me is at other times, you know, I've been able to build a car that's better than everyone else's. And it obviously helps me. And like right now, I've built other cars for other people that are identical to mine. So, you know, you're losing your advantage because you're giving it away. But it's also part of my business is to,
right,
because it's what customers want. You know, I want the car just like yours. I want something just as capable. Well, you know, in a way I was frustrated because I'm like, I have no advantage. My car has no advantage over Dave's. And it's driving me crazy because I don't want that to be the case. I always want to have the most capable car. And so I just thought about, you know, I thought, well, could I get more travel out of my shocks, or could I do this? And nothing was going to accomplish what I wanted to, other than I came up with this idea for adjustable hydraulic shocks, which, you know, I mean, the rear of my car has 19 inches of travel. I mean, that's a lot for a car that's 78 inches wide. Front's got like 17 inches of travel. I just can't get more droop. I can't get more articulation. It's as much as I can get into it with 50-degree steering too. I mean, it's packaging it all. It's a lot to ask. So I started thinking about it, and I watched some videos from the event and seeing what my suspension was doing. And I noticed on some of the obstacles that I was having a hard time with, you know, maybe I was hung up and the front end was fully extended as it was drooped out, but the rear was not. The rear was still compressed quite a bit because the weight was on the rear shocks. And so I started thinking about ways to be able to raise the car up, but I also can't extend the shocks past full droop because, you know, the suspension can't handle it, drive lines can't handle it, things would bind up. So without explaining what I'm actually doing, I basically made some modifications to the shocks that allow me to, you know, force the extension of the shocks up to, you know, up to 14 inches past ride height. So, I mean, it's got a ton of adjustment, and we've used it at 2 events now. And I mean, it's not the kind of thing where it just helps you everywhere. I mean, it might only help you once all weekend. And there's times where it might help you, but it doesn't mean other people can't make that same line. But there's no doubt in my mind that there will be places, there will be obstacles that, I mean, until other people get this same type of setup, but there will be obstacles that no one else will make other than my car, which that's the way I like it to be.
Right. And you think that's going to, I would imagine that that's with the kind of terrain that we're going to see in Goldendale this coming weekend, it's going to be a place that's going to be handy.
There could be, yeah, there certainly could be a few places where it would be beneficial. And, you know, it's actually some really pretty simple technology. I mean, the plumbing and everything is somewhat expensive, but I don't know. I had one guy already ask me about buying this setup, and I told him no. I said I don't want to sell it. I'm definitely not going to sell this until at least the end of the season. Like, I would like to at least keep this advantage for the rest of the year. And then, you know, I guess I feel like it's easy enough that if I don't sell it, other people will figure it out. It's just another one of those ideas where people will see how it works, and once they see how it works, then they can copy the idea. So
right. So everybody's going to be taking pictures, video of your car this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they'll figure some stuff out. I mean, it's pretty discreet, really. People didn't notice it right away, and I didn't say anything about it. So
right.
We put it on right before Supercrawl and Vernal, and man, I don't know. I think I had told a couple people about it, but, you know, most people didn't notice it throughout the weekend.
Yeah, Tacoma was the one that brought it up to me originally.
Oh, gotcha.
Because he was like, is this legal? And I'm like, yeah, should be.
Yeah. There was one obstacle in Rangeley. We used it a couple times in Rangeley. One time to take a line that, you know, other people were able to make it through the same gate, but the line we took was the easiest, most direct line, and the car drove right up it and, like, just scraped. It scraped and drug a little bit, and knowing, like, that I've got the whole car, like, just fully jacked up, I'm like, no one else is making that line. No one else is driving through there. But yeah, there was a couple of places where it was certainly an advantage. And
so each one of the shocks is individually controlled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I think, you know, just like rear steer, there will be a lot to learn. There's going to be, it's just like any of this stuff, front digs, rear steer, cutting brakes, any of it. Like,
just because you have the weapon doesn't mean you know how to use the weapon. Yes.
Yeah. And the more you learn, the more valuable you realize things are. I used to think that there was no benefit to front cutting brakes. And then the more I learned, I thought, man, there's so much you can do with front cutting brakes or whatever. But and you'll get guys that will tell you, oh, it doesn't really matter. It's like, well, yeah, you think that until you start really, really analyzing situations where you could, potentially do something. And some of them, you may only use them a few times a year, but when you do, it's a huge benefit. So,
Right. Like that would have been handy down in Farmington that time where you got the left and right hand cone.
Oh, I know. Would have drove right over it. Yeah, I haven't even drove my car since Rangeley, and it's been hot here. I just haven't really wanted to get outside and do much, but I'm eager to test it out more because I don't have a lot of seat time screwing with the hydraulic suspension controls, but it would be exciting to see different places where it's beneficial.
Well, this week up here in Goldendale, like it was in the hundreds, and then we got here, it's been in the high 90s. Humidity's been hanging around 35-40%, so not as dry really as it normally is. But temperatures are dropping on Thursday, and it's supposed to be like 75 or 78 on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be like the coolest up here in like years.
So, I don't know. Well, I mean, you haven't been at the Supercrawl events, but you've been at the We Rock events. So this year, so far, and I would think it's going to change at some point. So far, this year, we have not had one event that has been over 90 degrees. We have not had an event that has hit 90 or higher. Out of like 4-5 events.
Right, and that's really lucky because I know that every one of my setups it's been hell out there because it's so dang hot. That was the problem out at Rangeley was that way. Cedar was very warm and it cooled off. That's one reason I like going into Baghdad is because I know that's going to be an event where it's not going to be 900 degrees out during setup. Of course, it could snow the week before and be snow on the ground still on Tuesday, like the first year.
Right.
But yeah, it's been lucky. I mean, we got really hot in Oklahoma this year. It was really hot, really humid, and everybody was just melting. It was it wasn't real fun. The event was, the weather wasn't.
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate with some decent weather. Haven't had any bad weather really either. So
timing's been good.
So Farmington for Grand Nationals,
looking
good still. I know we've got this COVID stuff flaring back up, I guess you'd say.
We've not heard anything from BLM. We have our permit in hand, so in fact, we have a 5-year permit down there in Farmington now. Mm-hmm. So as long as the governor down there doesn't pull any shenanigans, then there shouldn't be an issue at all. I mean, like I said, we have everything in place. So
nice.
But of course, BLM will do whatever the state does. So hopefully, let's just hope that the state doesn't close down again.
Well, looking forward to going there again. I mean, we didn't go last year because of COVID limitations, but as you can imagine, sometimes it's nice to take a break from an event site for a year or two and go back.
Yeah, I'm going to expand down there too. I'm going to go into some areas that we haven't used yet. I know I did that last year, or the last time we were there. I pushed into some other areas. I normally like to make everything a little more compact, but that's the kind of area where we can spread out. And I think spreading out is, at least from my point of view, because then it doesn't become follow the leader as much.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think we didn't do it in Rangeley, but in Cedar City, you had the idea to spread the groups out between the unlimited class was on like course 1 and course 3 instead of course 1 and 2. And
Correct.
I really liked it because it, there was less copying people, which, it was, that's another thing that's interesting about the way things are right now is everyone's cars are so similar, and it's good and bad. It gives people confidence to try and follow you, to try and they see what you did and they think, we have basically the same car. We should be able to do that. And it's good because it's really helped the sport, because it's helped people feel like they can be competitive. But it's also made it difficult because typically, people can follow the line that you've taken.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of nice to spread it out to prevent it from being the same, everyone doing the same thing.
Right. And I think I can do that at Farmington as well, because that area is big enough and there's enough there that we can do that. Rangeley was just a nightmare going into that event. Like I told all the drivers, that, our hands were tied going into the event. When I got there over the weekend before, I was ready to just shut it down and cancel the event. And then Shelly goes, "Come on, you can do it." And so, it wasn't the kind of event that I like to set up, but it ended up working out really well, at least for the most part. So, there was some separation there that I didn't think we'd have. I thought we'd have the top 4 or 5 guys all, within 1 point.
Yeah. And, a few things different, and it could have gone that way.
Yes.
Something that I have learned over the past 3-4 years, I'm sure you've heard me complain many times about the events being too easy, the courses being too easy. Well, one of the reasons I don't like the courses being too easy is because, a guy that would normally be 50, 60, 100 points behind me is now right there with me.
Right.
And if I make one stupid mistake, he could be ahead of me. And so I don't like that, because normally if it's harder, I'd be farther ahead of that guy, right?
Or very good possibility of that, yes. True.
What it's taught me is you have to analyze every possibility on this course. You can't underestimate any gate. You can't underestimate any scenario. And you have to have, you have to have a backup plan for if something doesn't work
right
the way you want it to. And so the thing that happened in Rangeley is, that's basically what happened. People underestimated things that weren't extremely difficult, but it was harder than they expected. And so, there was a lot of people that made silly mistakes that they knew they were better than. They were good enough that they shouldn't have done it.
Right.
But it's something that's made me better, was knowing, because there was a year or two where Chris and I were doing really well and winning every event, but we were still screwing up. We're making mistakes at every event. And I was telling Chris, this is going to catch up with us at some point. Like, I know we're winning, but we can't make these mistakes. We will get beat because of it. And, we've slowly gotten better and better about not making the dumb mistakes,
Right. Well, and one of the things that I think people underestimated or have underestimated this year is the transitions from sets of cones to sets of cones. And, I don't always make the cones the difficult spot. I may put the transition, trying to get to that next set of cones is where I make the difficulty. And it's either time consuming or, they end up taking backups or they roll there, not necessarily in the cones. So, but that's the game that I'm trying to play with you guys at the same time. So, and it really depends on the terrain. I was able to make the transitions, like you said, where people just made mistakes, course flow mistakes or whatever. So,
yep. There was, not to pick on Ryan Maxfield, but, Ryan was doing well. He would have been, I don't remember, he would have been third or something going into the shootout and hit a cone on I think it might have been the last gate of his last course. And, I watched him, and it was just the typical scenario that I was talking about. That it wasn't really that hard, the spot that they were in, but we've all been in a situation like that where you just underestimated it. You thought, you may have walked the course and just glanced at it and go, oh yeah, you just turn and go up through there. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And then you get in the situation and it doesn't work out like you pictured. And, I'm sure it was one that they wish they had back. It just didn't work out like they wanted, and they just misjudged it.
Yep.
So
what, besides the shocks and doing the portal boxes the way, starting basically from scratch and building your own, now supplies running out, what else out there is Jesse Haines got in his mind? You got a list that you're working on? You don't even have to tell us what, but I mean.
Well, I can't say that I have any technological developments in my mind right now. And, the shocks thing, it was, it was a bit surprising, but from concept to reality was not even 2 weeks, I don't think. I mean, I just had the idea, and I mean, in a matter of 2 weeks, I ran multiple ideas through my head, oh, I could do this. And then you think about it and go, no, because this, and that won't be as good or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I threw it together fast, from not even thinking about this being a possibility to having it on my car in 2.5 weeks, something like that. So who knows,
Yeah,
I could have something new on my car before Farmington. But one thing that I've devoted a lot of time to over the last, a little over a year, actually right before I got sick with COVID, I was working on designing a 2-seat chassis. And so that was March. Yeah, that was a year and a half ago, March of last year. And I mean, it's hard for me to say it's even finished, because it's not finished. It's constant development of refining the parts that will go with this chassis, or refining how we're going to build it. But I mean, at this point, we've got, I can't remember, I think I've sold 14, maybe even 15 of them. But only a few of them have actually hit the trail yet, or so far. But I don't know. I may have a car, 2-seat production trail car, done for myself in a few months here.
Cool. Excellent.
So we really have not marketed it hardly at all, and I know it's frustrating for people because some people want to get more info about it, or some people are interested in buying it, and I've been really really limited on selling them or even getting the info out there. And the reason is because I don't know. I mean, at some point, I guess I'll feel like we're really ready to sell them, but I'm trying to get this thing really developed so it's a well thought out kit where someone can buy it and it just goes together and it's simple and basic, and they'll be able to build the car quickly without a lot of custom fab stuff.
And will they be sold with fixturing so that, or are they going to offer the chassis only pre-welded, or are they going to come in kit?
So well, it's hard to say. I mean, we have a pretty elaborate fixture here that we use to build the chassis, and we have fixtures to put all the panels on them and all the mounts and all that stuff. But I've only sold one as a kit, and so Mike Johnson contacted me a few months ago asking about getting one of these chassis, and Mike's got some experience building cars and assembling kits.
Absolutely.
And so when he asked about chassis, I said, hey, I'll make you a deal. If you want to get one of these kits and try and build it without a fixture, I'll sell you one at a good price. And so, because I wanted to see if he would be capable of doing it, how well it would go together. And he was pretty happy with the results. He said it went together pretty good. And so because of that, I'm definitely considering selling it just as a do-it-yourself kit. But I don't know. I'm also a little bit torn on that because for the reason of your name is still on the car, but when it goes out there and someone doesn't do a very good job building it, that no one...
Does that reflect on you?
Yeah, not everyone's going to know that you aren't the one that put it together.
Right.
Or welded it. So, yeah, for me, I'm a little tempted to only offer them fully welded, but I feel like that part of that is because of the fact that we have so many resources to put a car together for people quickly and pretty reasonable price too, I'd say. I think, if someone in Australia or Europe or whatever wanted to buy a kit and they just wanted the chassis and they wanted to do it themselves, I mean, that it's a lot easier to ship a pile of tubes across the country or across the world. So,
right.
I'd consider that too.
Well, cool. So we've been at this just a little less than 2 hours. It's getting kind of late. I know we waited until your kids went to bed, and I've got to get up early in the morning and beat the heat tomorrow, get this event site ready.
Rich, I'll tell you, I got to tell you, the last, when I did the Talent Tank interview, the same thing happened. You didn't really ask me about my personal life, and so because of that,
True.
I haven't really brought up my wife and kids. Well,
let's talk about it.
I got hell for not bringing up my wife and kids in this other interview, and so I don't want people to think that's not an important part of my life, because it definitely is.
Anybody that really knows you understands that it is.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been married for 5.5 years now, Sarah and I, and been together for whatever it was, 2 more years beyond that. But and Sarah actually, she competed in a few We Rock events.
Yep.
Herself, and maybe I'm biased because she's my wife, and I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch her drive, but she's actually a pretty talented driver. She just, some people have it and some people don't, and she has the feel for it. She can just, she has it, but she also doesn't like the stress of competition. So, she kind of had fun doing it a little bit, but she had some anxiety from competing in some bigger events, so
Right.
That was something she did for a little bit, and it was fun. But we also started having kids shortly after that, and obviously that changes things. But my wife and kids are at pretty much every event. Once in a while, there's a reason that they can't make it, and I might be there by myself, but anymore that's pretty rare. So
I love it seeing the families out at the events.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of makes the events special for us is, my daughter Willow she's 4, but she has friends at the events, and she really looks forward to going and seeing these people. And Dave Wong's daughter is, I think she'd tell you, Reese is her best friend. And then she's also played with Ryan Maxfield's kids, and they have fun, even though his kids aren't able to make it to too many of the events, but they, I don't know, it's like they're the best friends that she has are the kids that she sees at the rock crawling events. And the same goes for myself and Sarah. Some of the best friends we have are the people that we see at the event. So we always look forward to going and hanging out for the weekend. I think my favorite part of the event is usually not the actual competition, because I don't really enjoy the stress of the competition. I enjoy more before and after the event, or after the event on Saturday before the stress of Sunday starts.
Right.
So.
No, I get it. I always wish that I wasn't so dang tired come Friday and Saturday nights.
Yeah.
Because all week long, working, setting up, now that, especially since Josh moved on and I've been doing it myself, there's just, well, you've set up events. That's a lot of work. And, to do it 8-9 times a year is, and, luckily we're not doing the dirt ride anymore, so I don't have 21 or 22 events a year. But, it's the older I get, the harder it gets to do that.
Well,
and
I can imagine.
I
know how much work it was for me, and I kind of miss it. Like I enjoyed the physical aspect of it, because I had the motivation where I wanted to do it. Like I was kind of excited about doing it, but it was so much work at the same time.
Right.
And it was like this exhausting thing where it was the best workout I'd have all year, 5 days of setting up for the event, and hiking and moving rocks and all of it. But
Yep. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your rock crawling history. I know we didn't get into any of the racing or anything like that. We'll have to maybe visit again and get into some other detail. But Thank you for making me spend the time to talk about Sarah and the kids as well. I don't want to be
Yeah.
on her list, but
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of detail that I wanted to talk to you about that maybe wasn't talked about in the on the other side, with Wyatt's, the talent tank. So I wanted to make sure we
Yeah.
talked a little
That
more
was
technical.
well. That's been over a year, and so
Yeah.
even things change and come up in a year that are new that were not happening at that time. So
Right.
yeah, there's always something new to talk about.
Well, again, I want to say thank you for coming on board, and
Yeah, you're welcome.
we will see you this weekend,
Yeah, I don't know when this is going to air, but
Thursday.
oh, well, there you go.
Yep.
Well, hopefully, I
Maybe
say
she'll
it,
let you listen to it on the drive up.
probably not. I'd probably say it every year, but I do really enjoy Goldendale, and I hear a lot of other guys say that they don't. I don't know. It's just a little bit different type of terrain, but it's something I have always liked. I've always liked the terrain there, and I think Goldendale may have the best spectators at any event that we go to, but so I'm always looking forward to
Yeah,
that one.
I think that they're knowledgeable,
Yeah,
for sure here, because there are a lot of trail wheelers that come out to watch this event, and so that helps. Baghdad, we had that one has built on itself from the Congress days, and sheer numbers, it's the biggest, and then Farmington's normally pretty good, but the actual educated rock crawling enthusiast is out here in Goldendale watching the event.
yeah, they love it. Which
Yep.
it's cool when there's new spectators that have never seen it before and they have no idea what's going on. But Goldendale's got a lot of people that get it.
Yes.
They know what's going on and what needs to happen, and it's good to see them every year.
Yep. Excellent. All right, then we'll see you this weekend. Thank you.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yep, bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.